Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly news recap for the 8th to the 14th of September 2025. So this week, Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct that was allegedly their longest Direct since like maybe the original Switch Direct. Anyway, it was kind of disappointing though, to be honest. So we'll get through a little bit. So there was a bit of a brief talk about the next film, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which allegedly going to be using parts of the story from Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, but it's going to be mixing and matching some stuff. And most of the cast are pretty much the same. And then to sort of, I guess, capitalize on that, they are re-releasing Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 as a bundle. It's coming out beginning of next month. I don't believe there's any specific differences. As far as I'm aware, it is just like the emulated Super Mario Galaxies. I don't think there's any additional things for it running on Switch 2 or anything like that. It will be, I think, €70 for both games, and if you want to buy them separately, that's €40 each, I believe is what they're going with. Sorry, there are actually some additional things. So this storybook, I think, has new pages in it. I don't know if that was ever a big part of the game. I never played Galaxy, so I don't know. Was the storybook a big deal? They're also planning on releasing the storybook as a physical item for people to buy, which I imagine it might get some more interest after the film. Anyway, so that will be beginning of next month. There is a 2-pack that you can buy as a physical edition, and if you want to buy them individually, it's digital. There's a new tennis game that's going to be coming next year, 12th of February, I think, of next year. So Super Mario Bros. Tennis Fever. The Fever thing is basically there are new tennis racket types that have different effects. I think you can do like I think it just makes the ball faster or slows it down or gives it crazy spin and stuff like that. There's not like a huge amount to it. It's more of the Super Mario thing where, let's make everything bullshit and have nothing have nothing based on any actual skill. Everything has to be random bullshit. Anyway, so Peach cheats, obviously, because of course she has generational wealth. Like, she's already cheating. But yeah, you have your fever bar, which might as well be your limit break, your super meter, and you can do things. So the fire racket leaves little fire patches on the court. Because you can see the ice one leaves a little ice rink, little like mini mushroom stuff. Anyway, lots of those different things. There is an adventure mode, I think, at some point where everyone's a baby. Anyway, I believe that is a Switch 2 exclusive. Yes, Nintendo Switch 2. So this won't be on the original Switch. So Nintendo it seems like they're moving ahead with Switch 2 exclusive games. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is getting a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Just again, not anything massively different. There is this meetup in Bella Bell Park thing, which is really more of a collection of mini games. It's a little bit like a Mario Party almost without the board game. Just like if all you did was the mini games, I guess. And I don't think that had a release date. Yeah, it's just next year at some stage, beginning of next year. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. So it's a new Yoshi game. We're not doing the Woolly World. So we're going back to Yoshi being made of lizard parts, I guess, presumably. He's not made of yarn anymore. That's the point. So there's a mysterious storybook. Yoshi gets pulled into the mysterious storybook. You have this little flower creature. It's not clear if it's actually if it's the same flower from Super Mario Bros. Wonder, potentially. But the deal with it is that it's a little bit of Scribblenauts in some ways. You can draw things with this flower guy on your back and add them to the storybook in some ways. And you can see it is going for a slightly different. I did say we were going back to lizard parts. We're not really. We're going back to now he's made of paper instead. And it has got a little bit of like a stop motion animation thing going on, to kind of give you the idea that it's a storybook. These dandelion seeds are meant to do something. I think they give the flower guy different powers or something like that. Anyway, there's a little bit more on that in the trailer if you are interested, but it does seem like it'll be, a fun time. And it does also seem like it's maybe a little bit more of a puzzle game rather than a platforming type game. Did that have a release date? Yeah, again, so similarly spring, early next year. And then whoever wrote the article for Insider Gaming just decided to phone it in after the Yoshi one. So Stormlancers is available today. We're not going to tell you anything about it. To be honest, I also don't know anything about it, so I'm going to skip ahead on that one too. Dinkum, November 5th as a timed exclusive. It's going to also be on PC as far as I'm aware. I think Dinkum is like a town management thing. Or a camp management, grow your crops, the usual kind of cozy thing, and then it's got a little bit of underground. It's a little bit of a like Animal Crossing kind of thing, but obviously not actually Animal Crossing. Popukam, I think, is like a Castle Crashers? No, I was way off. It's Slime Rancher. No. Anyway, what's that game called? Puzzle Bobble? Isn't it? Where you have to effectively do match 3 stuff? Anyway, it seems like it's like a co-op puzzle platformer kind of thing. I don't know. It looks interesting, but I don't think it'll get too many people playing it. Tomodachi Life had a little bit more to show off here. So if you're not familiar with Tomodachi Life, it is kind of a game that plays itself. So think of it as like making characters in The Sims, and you give them all their personality types, and you give them their traits and interests and all that kind of thing, and then you don't control them. You just let them do their thing. And that is effectively how Tomodachi Life works. You are effectively just watching the simulation. You can intervene like every now and then, but like nothing to the level of The Sims intervention. You are very much just letting them do their thing and just seeing how silly everything turns out. And for that reason, it's a bit of a niche game. Mostly because it's not really a game. It's more of a funny simulation kind of thing. It's good for like, if you put in your friends or put in your family or whatever, and just seeing how some of the hilarious interactions that they can have. Again, early next year. Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection coming to Nintendo Switch. This is always kind of funny to have Mortal Kombat on Nintendo, just because the very original Mortal Kombat was somewhat censored when it was on Nintendo. Very famously, Sub-Zero's fatality, the very first one, where he manages to somehow pull your spine out of your neck, was censored on Nintendo, and I think he just knocked your head off, basically. I don't know, it's always kind of funny to see it when it's back now. I don't know if that fatality is actually in there. It'd be funny to see. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which is obviously the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then Intergrade is the DLC with Yuffie. That was not in the original game, so that's coming to Switch 2 end of January of next year, and it's been confirmed that what was the second one called? Jesus. Nope. No, I don't remember. Whatever the second remake was called will be making its way to Switch 2 as well at some stage. Link's Banner of the Spark is already available on a good few different platforms. It's just making its way to Switch now, or Switch 2 now. Today, in fact, or today, whenever the Nintendo Direct was. Friday, I think. Skip ahead to some combat. So it's a bit of like a town management thing, and then also an action RPG. You go out into these dungeons, you rescue like robots and other people to join your town, your village, and they can help you either just make the village better, or they can make new equipment for you, or unlock blueprints and stuff like that. And it's generally a kind of rescue the people, make your village a bit better, and then the better the village is, the better your equipment is, and then you can go out to rescue more people, and so on. Yeah, this was a bit of a big deal. So Hades 2 coming the end of this month. So actually very soon, 25th of September. It's going to leave early access and it's hitting 1.0, and for now it will be PC and Nintendo Switch. We'll say that Hades OG did eventually make its way to PlayStation and Xbox. So, it might be like a 6-month thing or a 12-month thing or something like that, but it will eventually make its way to the other platforms, I would think. I'm pretty excited about this, but I am probably going to... I have a lot on my plate right now, so I'm probably going to wait until it's out for a bit. But yeah, this is going to be a really good game. Not sure if this trailer actually has gameplay. Okay, it has a little bit of gameplay. Okay. But yeah, more Hades. Who could say no about that? I played the original one almost to death. I don't think I quite unlocked everything. Wait, is she Zagreus' daughter? Is that what the deal is? Okay, again, I haven't really been following it because I've kind of been like, yeah, it'll be a thing, and whenever it comes out, I'll check on it. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, 25th of September for that one, and yeah, it will be PC as well, and then eventually it will make its way to the other consoles. There's going to be some amiibos for Kirby Air Riders. They're like $50, which is kind of insane. And I think the deal is that they're like a little bit bigger than the usual amiibo, I guess, to make room for the Air Rider. But yeah, $50 for an amiibo is a bit much. Hyrule Warriors: The Age of Imprisonment, which is effectively the Dynasty Warriors thing. 6th of November, so that's soon enough. So this is, if you haven't been following it, this is effectively what was Zelda doing Tears of the Kingdom when she went back in time. She was helping with the Imprisonment War, which is sending Ganondorf, sealing him up beneath Hyrule Castle, and then the events of Breath of the Wild would have happened, and then the events of Tears of the Kingdom would have happened. So this is going way back in time, essentially. But it will play a lot like the other Hyrule Warriors games, which were effectively Dynasty Warriors. It's one character versus thousands of mobs, effectively. And they're fun time. They're a fun time, but I do think they get a little bit boring if you play it for too long. Like, if you play it in long bursts, I think you'll get pretty bored. Whereas if you play it for like 2 hours or something, and then play something else, and come back to it like a day later, 2 days later, something, it mightn't be as bad. Anyway, my personal opinion on Dynasty Warriors games. Moving on, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, 5th of February 2026. Again, I think this is coming to pretty much every platform, but it was announced on the Nintendo Direct. So this was originally a PS1 game, Dragon Quest VII. I don't know if it's like a beloved entry in Dragon Quest series, because I don't really follow Dragon Quest that much. I'm really just waiting for 8. I'm waiting for 8 just to get a port, even. I don't need a remaster or anything like that. Just give me a way to actually play it that isn't on my fucking phone. Anyway, so Dragon Quest VIII Reimagined is effectively... or Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, rather, is essentially the remake of Dragon Quest VII. How much of a remake it is it going to be a one-to-one thing, like a Snake Eater Delta, or is it going to be Final Fantasy VII Remake? We're going to adjust a few things here and there, maybe change the story up a little bit, that kind of thing. We don't know. But it looks pretty good. It looks pretty cool. I was reminded, though, that I actually hate the music of Dragon Quest. Like, I've gone through the gamut of emotions with the Dragon Quest music. Like, I kind of found it charming when I was playing it, Dragon Quest VIII, and then over time, it doesn't change. It's the same music all the time. They like reorchestrate it every now and then, but it always just sounds the exact same. And I just feel like it's so old-fashioned. I don't know what way to think about it. I mean, because like, it's not like the Legend of Zelda theme has ever changed, really, massively. And like, that music's great. I still like it. I like the Final Fantasy Crystal theme or whatever. Like, I still like that, even though they change it up every now and then. But I feel like the Dragon Quest music just doesn't change. and it's always not good. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. Speaking of not good, the Virtual Boy is coming back for some fucking reason. All right. Anyway, so you're gonna need to have the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, the plus one, the extra one, the expansion pack thing, and then you're also gonna need to have to buy this new Virtual Boy peripheral. There's been no pricing on it yet, how much exactly it will cost. So it is not a Virtual Boy. This is important. It is a plastic shell that you put the Switch into. So the Switch just sits into the red part, effectively. So it's not like it has any kind of internals or any kind of electronics or anything going on in there. You just kind of dock the Switch in there, and it effectively does all of the work. So it's a little bit like Google Cardboard in some ways. So pricing wise, it shouldn't be that expensive since it is effectively just a chunk of plastic. But this is also Nintendo, so they'll find a way to make it crazy expensive. Anyway, these 14 games that were released on the Virtual Boy, they will be released over time. So don't like rush to get this thing out and thinking you have 14 games to play. They won't all be available at once. They'll be, I imagine, drip fed over the next few months. 17th of February, though, you'll be able to do all of that if you really want to. I mean, the Virtual Boy was not exactly, a bestseller for Nintendo. And then there is actually like a cardboard version of it as well, which I guess you have to play like this. That sounds fun. Anyway, what did I want to say about Virtual Boy? Okay, sorry. That is actually exactly what I wanted to point out. Hang on, I need to catch this before it leaves. Okay, look at the position he's in. So you can see the controller, sure, is in that position, but you are stuck like this, effectively, because the legs of the Virtual Boy don't move, and the Virtual Boy itself doesn't rotate. At least the original one didn't. It was like locked in place. So you were stuck with a very awkward curve in your neck for substantial amounts of time, depending on how long you wanted to play the game. It was not comfortable in any way whatsoever. Ergonomics were not a thing when the Virtual Boy was trotted out. Whether the new one will have some kind of adjustable thing to it, I don't know. I kind of feel like it won't, but yeah, there's a reason it didn't sell well. Anyway, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly is getting a remake. Again, since I don't really follow the series, I don't know if Crimson Butterfly is one of like the more interesting ones, but I think Koei Tecmo have been doing like remasters of these at least. And I guess they decided to do a full remake for this one. It's curious why they chose the remake path for this one and not a remaster instead. Maybe they felt they get more money out of it or something like that. But if you're not familiar, the Fatal Frame games are Japanese ghost horror, where you use the camera obscura, to take pictures of ghosts, and they don't like having their picture taken, I guess. They're all about like data privacy, and they don't like having their picture taken in public, maybe something like that. I don't know. They're very ahead of their time, really. Did that get a release date? I don't think it had a release date. I think it was like a wishlist now thing. So there's a couple of games getting some ports. So Stardew Valley is getting a Switch 2 port. Overcooked 2 is getting a Switch 2 port. One Piece Pirate Warriors, which is Dynasty Warriors, but One Piece. And then Human Fall Flat also getting a Nintendo Switch 2 port. I don't think there was anything massively... Like, I don't think there was more stuff because it's the Nintendo Switch 2 edition. I don't think so. I think it's just, it'll benefit from a performance improvement. That's kind of it. Power Wash Simulator 2. Again, we still don't really have a release date. It's soon, I guess. Fall 2025, autumn 2025. So that should be before the end of October, at some stage. Suika Game, winter 2025. So that could be like the Christmas situation. I don't know what Suika Game is. I thought it was Fruit Ninja, effectively, but I don't think that's what it is. Oh no, this is Puzzle Bobble. That's what I was thinking. It's Puzzle Bobble with fruit. Okay, that's fine. Well, it kind of is, I guess. It's more like you match the fruit, but then the fruit becomes becomes a bigger fruit, rather than with Puzzle Bubble, it just destroys the matching things. Anyway, okay, that's weak again. Fine. Again, something I thought would have gotten more fanfare, but Metroid Prime 4 has a release date. It's going to be 4th of December. No mention if there is a Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo version of Metroid Prime, or if it's just going to be the same version for both platforms. I'm kind of thinking that Nintendo will probably release a Switch 2 edition of Metroid Prime 4, but it'll be a while. You know, because they'll get everybody to buy this, and then, oh, hey, now there's a Switch 2 edition, and I'll get everybody to buy that too. Anyway, so they were showing off this motorbike gameplay. I think they didn't show a great environment for it, because this looks very bland. And not really Metroid, in my opinion. They do a much like nicer location a little bit later in the trailer, but yeah, like here, like this feels a bit more Metroid-y. You know, it's kind of not grim exactly, but Metroid always had a kind of dark and closed-in vibe to it, and that kind of open desert just didn't scream Metroid to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't feel like it. Anyway, more Metroid Prime, 4th of December this year, some stage. Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC is effectively a roguelite rush mode thing, but it is taking you back to Donkey Kong Island, which is pretty cool. So you will get to see kind of like, not reimagined, but like higher definition, I guess, Donkey Kong Island, going all the way back to like Donkey Kong Country kind of stuff. So this is a mode you can access after you finish the main game. It is effectively post-game content, where you join the Void Gang, and you have like a time attack thing where you have to collect as many gems as possible. And I believe the way it works is it is sort of a, not exactly a roguelike kind of thing, but you do like multiple runs. And every time you do a run, you learn the layout of the map a little bit more. The map doesn't change. The map's always the same. So it's just a case of you figuring out how to do it as fast as possible. It's really more of a time attack thing, or a high score thing. Calling it a roguelike is maybe a bit misleading. Because I don't think there's a case where you can die, I suppose, technically, but I don't think it's necessarily expected that you will. Whereas at a roguelike, it is somewhat expected that you would die fairly often. Anyway, that's available now. I don't think it's free. I think it's paid. Yeah, it says it there. It's paid DLC. I'm not sure how much. Pokemon Pokopia is probably one of the more interesting things that was at the Nintendo Direct. And it's kind of an interesting idea. So you're playing Ditto. And if you're not familiar, Pokemon, Ditto is the copycat Pokemon. So he can, or the transform Pokemon as he's put here. He can basically transform into other Pokemon. And that's kind of his deal. And I guess the issue here is that he's lost his master, their master, I should say. I don't think Ditto has a gender. I also didn't think Ditto could transform into people. I thought there was always like a thing in the Pokédex where it's like some people believe Dittos can like transform into humans and live among us kind of thing. But I always thought it was a sort of copy-pasta kind of thing, creepypasta kind of thing for Pokemon. But no, I wonder, does Bulbasaur realize he's talking to a Ditto? Anyway, not clear. But as you can see, Ditto mimicking Bulbasaur's Vine Whip. You can create plants, and that's nicer for Bulbasaur to live around and that kind of thing. So it is kind of a... So it's kind of like a Minecraft thing, but also like a village management or habitat management might be more accurate. And it has been... we'll talk about this later in industry bullshit, but there's been some stuff around Pokemon patents lately, and it is kind of, a bit shit of Nintendo having what is effectively Minecraft here. and trying to claim patents on other things. But yeah, we'll talk about that later in industry bullshit. But this is effectively Minecraft Pokemon with some kind of like island habitat management, maybe. But yeah, it's an interesting one, I think. I mean, it's not another pretty standard Pokemon game. You know, it's a little bit different, but still using the Pokemon's IP. Anyway, I don't think that had a release date. Let's see now. Oh, is that like literally the opening village of the first Pokemon? I think it might be. Like, there's a Snorlax in the way here and everything. All right, so next year, some stage. It has Nintendo Switch 2 here, but I don't think it was confirmed that it's an exclusive. Pokemon Legends ZA just showed off a little bit more. The game is out pretty soon, but somewhat a little gallingly, I guess, is that there is DLC, paid DLC for the game already being shown off, and the game itself isn't even out. So this is Mega Evolutions for Pikachu. So Raichu has 2 Mega Evolutions, and this is effectively what the DLC will be about. But yeah, the fact that there's 2, or the fact that there's a paid DLC for Pokemon ZA when the game itself isn't out yet is a bit shit. It's a bit on the nose. Danganronpa 2x2, that's apparently how it's pronounced, is effectively a remaster, probably is probably a bit more accurate, of Danganronpa 2. Just, I don't know, people tell me it's the better Danganronpa. I don't know. I only played the first one, so I couldn't say for definite. Danganronpa is a murder mystery kind of thing that's also a little bit Squid Games. It's a little bit Battle Royale, the film. And Danganronpa 2x2 is adding a new scenario that has all new characters, all new murder scenarios, and so on. This is almost like an extra game, effectively. And it would have to have all new characters because it's a Danganronpa game. Pretty much fucking everybody dies. Anyway, coming out eventually on basically everything. Dynasty Warriors Origins also getting a Switch 2 port. I don't know why this wasn't included in the other ports, but yeah, it's getting a Switch 2 port and its DLC is coming across as well. Monster Hunter Stories 3. I think, was this shown off before? I'm not sure if this is an announcement or if this is just a reminder that the game exists. But it is coming to Nintendo Switch 2. And this is also, again, talking about the Pokemon patents, but Monster Hunter Stories is effectively Pokemon, but Monster Hunter. And Nintendo seem totally fine with showing this off on their own showcase, even though they're using those patents to go after Palworld. And yet, Monster Hunter's right. Anyway, as I said, we'll talk about it later. Partner showcase, again, was just showing off a bunch of games that are making their way over to the Switch 2. We got 2 Point, Museum, Disgaea 7, FIFA, but not FIFA anymore, Dragon Quest 1-2 Remake, Virtua Fighter, Lego Voyagers, Little Nightmares, Persona, all the games. And Resident Evil Requiem also will be making its way to Switch 2 when it comes out on everything else, as well as Village and Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. It's also a new trailer, but it didn't show anything especially new. And then the one more thing is Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. So it's been a while since Three Houses. And I think there was a Fire Emblem in between, but it was sort of a smaller game. I'm not sure if it was like a main Fire Emblem entry. Could be wrong. You know, the one that had like the red and blue hair? It was like a Pepsi advert. Anyway, Fortune's Weave seems like it's going for like ancient Rome gladiatorial combat thing. So there's like a competition between warring factions kind of thing, as opposed to Three Kingdoms, which was Three Houses rather, which was, you know, like all out war kind of thing. So yeah, not clear if it's a full Fire Emblem or if it's another mini one, but it seems like it's going to be a full entry into the series. Anyway, that was Nintendo's one more thing. So yeah, like I said, no, it wasn't a great Nintendo Direct IMO, and they spent in my opinion, way too long talking about Super Mario Galaxy, the film. Anyway, I'm going to move on. But resurrecting things from the grave. So Acclaim, who thugs quite sure was dead, has no. Rumors of their demise have been not exaggerated at all. They were dead, but now the trademark, I think, was bought a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. So this is effectively Acclaim announcing its return with 9 new games. We're only going to talk about a few of them. Most of these are, coming soon. Don't know any specific release dates. So Toss Down is the first one I want to take a look at. So Toss Down is... It's kind of like Crazy Taxi, kind of like Deliver at All Costs, kind of like Paperboy. In fact, most of the games that Acclaim were showing off were kind of like modern takes on older games. It's like a modern retro game, effectively. So the deal with this one is you are a delivery guy, and you're just trying to make your deliveries as fast as possible while chaos abounds. I think people are trying to take you out effectively all the time, stop you from making your deliveries. And the deal is to just, get there, make your delivery, get to the next delivery, and so on and so forth, and just try to do everything as fast as possible. I know it says fight back, but I don't think you're necessarily expected to actually attack enemies. It's more a case of you putting down countermeasures and that kind of thing. So yeah, it looks, it looks pretty chaotic. So exactly how much fun it is to play is debatable. I suppose it depends on how nuts everything gets. Anyway, that was Tossed Down. Ground Zero Hero is effectively Vampire Survivors, but with a nuclear radiation thing instead. The art style, I don't know, it reminded me kind of like The Simpsons, and then a little bit Plant vs. Zombies. That's kind of the vibe I was getting with the art style. But yeah, that's the kind of game it is. It's like a Vampire Survivors thing where you, instead of getting new weapons, you get new mutations, and the mutations are meant to synergize with other mutations and what have you. Basketball Classics is kind of a throwback to the 8-bit basketball games from very, very, very long time ago. And it definitely looks like it, because that's also the aesthetic they're going for. I don't know how many people are going to be really interested to play it. Pixel Washer... So Pixel Washer, at least at the beginning, just looks like pixel art Power Wash Simulator, and it is in some ways, but it does get a little bit more interesting in the second half of the trailer. So you're playing a pig, and this pig needs to wash everything. Again, I don't know why you're playing a pig exactly. Is it something about wallowing in mud and you're trying to take back the good name of pigs? I don't know, something like that. But yeah, at least at the beginning, it does seem like it's a pretty standard Power Wash thing. Power Wash Simulator, but make it 2D and make it pixel art. But later on, you do get some kind of interesting scenarios. There's a little bit there of an RPG. There's a little bit of a horror museum going on there. And you can buy your own stuff for that kind of thing. So it's got something to it, but I think we'd need to know, is there more to it than just 2D Power Wash Sim? The Prisoning Fletcher's Quest is a pretty old school platformer type game with some interesting bosses. Gridbeat is... So Gridbeat is a kind of puzzle rhythm game in some ways. So you're making your way around a grid. The grid has different locks and elements to it. It has a set path and stuff like that. And I think the general gist of it is you're gradually being... there's a time limit. You need to get through the grid, and you need to activate different areas of the grid. As you can see, there's power symbols. You need to rotate around them or whatever. But also you need to stick to the beat in a little bit of Crypto the Necrodancer kind of thing. So there's a bit of a puzzle element to it, then there's the rhythm element to it on top of it, and then with all of that, I think there's a time limit too. So you're trying to do this to the beat while also using an efficient route, while also not wasting any of your time, kind of thing. To be honest, I'm a little reminded of, and I know it doesn't play anything like this, but I'm a little reminded of like System Shock's hacking areas, and that's really just because it's very retro aesthetics. Like, in no way is the hacking part of System Shock like Gridbeat. Anyway, do we have? I don't think any of them had. Yeah, as I said, I don't think any of them had actual release dates. Hyperyuki Snowboard Syndicate. This is Jet Set Radio, but also SSX, and I don't know how it's taken so long for somebody to make this. Like it seemed like a no-brainer for such a long time to just fucking do SSX again, but make it Jet Set Radio, and you're done. And this is what they're doing. So yeah, I don't think I need to say any more about it. It's, unless you don't know what SSX is, I guess, which is a snowboarding game that was pretty heavy with like tricks and what's the way to put it? Like, not extreme exactly, but some like interesting layouts and some interesting levels and courses and stuff like that. So it wasn't like a super technical, trying to emulate the actual sport of snowboarding. It was very much an arcade snowboarding situation. And that does seem like what they're going for here. Why did it so, again, why is it taking so long for something like this to be made? Anyway, it's wishlist now for now. And then the last game is Katanaut, but that is actually out now, and it's going to be in the new releases section, so we'll talk about that then. But yeah, so there's some interesting games there. Talaka is a kind of... I'm not sure it's a Metroidvania exactly, but it is a side-scrolling hack and slash, but it does feel a little bit early. I think they're showing it off a little bit too early, because it does look a bit rough. Character art is really nice, monster art is really nice, but the backgrounds do not look great. And when you see it in motion, the animations don't look amazing either. So I'm hoping they'll be able to, polish it up and make it look a little bit nicer. But right now it looks a bit rough as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so of all the games they showed off, the only one that actually had a release date, Basketball Classics is also out now. I was gonna say the only one that had a release date is Katanaut, but it looks like that one did as well. Looks like the rest of them are all TBAs though. Yeah, they're all TBAs. Okay. Anyway, elsewhere, Pacific Drive dropped out a trailer here. There's Whispers in the Woods. The beginning of it is a little bit like a found footage horror thing in some ways. So if you haven't played Pacific Drive, what they're showing off here is effectively the beginning of the game, which is when you find the car that for some reason isn't being absorbed by the weird anomalies that are happening out here. And then this section is the garage, which is where you fix up the car and add new elements to it, whatever. It is effectively your home base. It's meant to be safe from the anomalies. So that's just people walking around in it when you're not there. Ooh, creepy. But otherwise, it's not super clear what exactly the DLC is about. There does appear to be a new zone and some new equipment and that kind of thing. But whether there's actual people wandering around in the exclusion zone now, I don't think so. I doubt it somehow. But I think they are going for a little bit more of a horror element, which was kind of missing, honestly, from the first game. And I was expecting a little bit more existential dread with the first game, which is kind of why I was interested in the first place, and it really isn't. It's just really more of a sort of survival crafting type game. Like, it was fine. I enjoyed it. But I went into it thinking that it would be like more of a horror thing to it. Anyway, there's no specific release date for this DLC. I think it's going to be this year at some stage. Yeah, it's 2025, but we don't know when. Anyway, it's coming to the middle of September, so the PlayStation Plus game catalog for extra and premium tiers is having some new games added to it. So we've got WWE 2K25, wrestling game from last year. Don't know. I haven't been following wrestling for decades, so I have no idea what's going on there. Persona 5 Tactics, or Persona 5 Tactica, is essentially XCOM, but make it Persona 5. I I have this. I just haven't gotten around to actually playing it. So once again, I've bought a game, haven't played it, and now it's been added to PlayStation Plus. I really got to stop doing that. And a Green Hell is probably maybe one of the earliest survival games. I feel like it's been on everything for ages, and I guess now it's being added to PlayStation Plus. Fate Samurai Remnant, I don't know. It's an action RPG. I'm not familiar with the Fate series. Oh, sorry. I know of the Fate series, but I don't really know exactly what kind of game it is. Crow Country we played on the channel. It's a throwback to survival horror games, like old PS1 style survival horror games, but it has almost Final Fantasy VII chunky pixel graphics. It's really good. It's a really, really good game. The gist of it is you are taken to Crow Country. It's a theme park that's definitely not Disneyland. You're looking for the guy in charge, Edward Crow, but some shenanigans have been happening in the amusement park. The Invincible is a sort of retro, kind of like the 80s version of what, space travel would be, kind of thing. There's a word for that. I don't know what it is, but like think about, like the big bubble astronaut helmets and everything has an aerial and like all of that kind of stuff. You are marooned on this planet. As it turns out, there's like a competing enemy faction that is also somewhere on this planet, and you are both trying to survive and also kind of spy on this enemy faction, all at the same time finding out that there's a reason this planet is mostly abandoned, and you're about to find out why. Anyway, Conscript is a top-down survival horror game that's set kind of somewhat in World War I, but also in a kind of horror fantasy World War I, because there's some horrible shit happening there that I don't think there were zombies in World War I. Also, I don't think it's zombies in this either, but there's certainly some like monsters and what have you. I've heard good things, but I've also heard that it's a little like a lot of old survival horror games, like sometimes the puzzles don't make sense, and that's kind of part and parcel with survival horror games. And then over on the premium side is effectively the last Legacy of Kain game to make its way into the PlayStation Plus catalogs. As far as I know, all of them are there now. So it's the 2 Blood Omens, the 2 Soul Reavers, and now Legacy of Kain Defiance. Defiance was the very last Legacy of Kain game. It was the one where you could play as both protagonists of the Legacy of Kain series, Kain and Raziel. Where they had sort of deuteragonist, is that what you call it, when there's 2 protagonists, and their storylines kind of clash together here, and I really liked it because it played a little bit. It was nowhere near as complex or as fast paced, but it played a little bit like Devil May Cry, kinda. You had like juggles and combos and kind of special powers you could use mid combat and that kind of thing, whereas the original games, Blood Omen 1 at least was like an old top down Zelda. Blood Omen 2 was really more of an action-adventure kind of thing, and then Soul Reaver 1 and 2 were more almost Tomb Raider. They're based off the Tomb Raider engine, if anything. And then going into a much more heavily combat thing in Defiance was interesting. What I really liked about Defiance is how the telekinesis abilities mixed into combat. And I think it was like the nicest way you could do it without getting overly complex. Like Star Wars Force Unleashed, for instance, has a very complex telekinesis force powers system where you can pick the guys up and you can manipulate them in 3D space and all this kind of stuff. And while you could pick up guys in Defiance, it was really just so you could throw them somewhere. That was it. That was the extent of the telekinesis, but it worked. Because you're like, slash, 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 take that guy, pull that guy from across the screen, pull him into your sword and stab him, or pull that guy and throw him off the bridge and that kind of thing. Because you were never planning to like pick him up and put him down somewhere safe. That was never the plan. The plan was always do something horrible. I think it worked out well. Anyway, I need to check out what that's like actually running on the emulator. I remember the game being a bit sluggish, so we'll see. Anyway, free games over in the Epic Games Store. Ghost Runner 2, which I believe has been in the free games before, but this is effectively Mirror's Edge, but you have a katana and you're a cyborg. Very good scores, as you can see. I have found it to be a little frustrating. The first one, anyway. I don't know about the second one. Maybe the second one is a little bit more forgiving, but I did find the first one to be a little bit I think my issue is that I wasn't always clear why I was dying in the first game. And that got a little bit frustrating because if I knew what mistake I was making, then I could change it. But if I don't even know what the mistake is, then it just gets a little bit frustrating. Anyway, also free, Monument Valley 2. Monument Valley 1 was added to the free library, I think, last week. So Monument Valley 2 is the sequel. It's more of it. It's still a very good puzzle game. And then the Battle of Polytopia, I am not familiar with. But apparently it's an award-winning strategy game about controlling the map, fighting enemy tribes, discovering new lands. Sounds like Civ. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like Civ, but like very low fidelity graphics. Oh wait, I think I do know this game. I always thought it was a mobile game though. Okay, so it's actually kind of... Maybe it's actually got a little bit of StarCraft to it as well, because there's a map that you need to uncover. You can see this kind of snowy area. It's like tiles that you haven't uncovered yet. Anyway, that's the Battle of Polytopia. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you want to play something right now? Well, you can play Borderlands 4 if you really want to. Reviews-wise, it's getting good reviews. Most reviews I've read are saying, yeah, it's it's effectively going back to what worked for Borderlands. They've toned down the jokes a little bit. It's a little bit more grounded, but not too much. You're still going to get stupid shit happening in the game. But it's not like Borderlands 3, I guess. It's more like Borderlands 1 in some cases. My opinion, I never liked Borderlands. I've always tried to, because it always seemed like something I would enjoy, but and it wasn't even like the jokes or the memes or anything like that. That was never an issue. I just never found it compelling and interesting in any real way, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I just never liked it. I just felt like I should, and I don't. Anyway, also, as we were talking about, Acclaim, Katanaut is also out this week. So Katanaut is kind of a Metroidvania. It's also got a little bit of Dead Space going on with it too. But you are stranded on this, this base that has had some kind of an outbreak of weird monster stuff. And it's you and maybe some friends, but usually it's just you by yourself. It is like a Metroidvania. It's like a bit of a search action thing, but it is also a roguelike in that you are probably going to die a lot, but dying is important because it gets you new abilities and stuff like that. Yeah, reviews-wise, it's been getting pretty solid reviews. I don't think it's like setting the world on fire, but it is like a pretty solid Metroidvania / roguelike. Unfortunately, though, it's now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, as I was alluding to in the Nintendo Direct, Nintendo got a new patent, 2 new patents in the last couple of weeks, and they have been problematic because they absolutely should not have gotten any of these patents. Anyway, so a little bit of background here from Timothy Geithner from TechDirt. So patent lawsuit between Nintendo and Pocket Pair. We talked about this a while ago. Pocket Pair are the developers who make Palworld, which was Pokemon with guns. It's effectively how it had been described. Pocket Pair did not describe it that way. Everybody else described it that way. Anyway, and the issue are these overly broad patents, generally considered to be fairly generic game mechanics, which is essentially you throw a thing out, it summons a guy. Has existed long before Pokemon, but Pokemon or Nintendo are trying to say that no, that's our unique thing, and nobody else was doing it before we were. Totally were, but okay, sure. Anyway, there's a bunch of prior art showing that, this game mechanic existed long before Pokemon. Anyway, that doesn't stop Nintendo from using the patent to sort of bash Pocket Pair and get them to... Well, they're taking them to court, as it turns out now, but usually the way this works is pay us to go away. So Pocket Pair have patched out several of the game mechanics from the game in order to protect itself, so stuff like throwing out something to summon the creature. Now you just press a button and they appear beside you. No special animation. There's also things like climbing onto the back of the Pokemon so you can fly around or sail around on the water and stuff like that. That's also been taken out. Now you just have a glider. But again, how many games have you seen where you get on a horse or can ride around on your summoned creature? Like every MMO practically has something that does this. And Nintendo aren't going after them. And as we talked about, Monster Hunter Stories has you riding your monsties, as they're called, which are effectively Pokemon. But same deal. You ride them to fly around, same issue. And that was given time on Nintendo Direct. So again, they're being a little bit careful or choosy on who they decide to apply their patents to. Anyway, on top of that, Nintendo was awarded 2 additional patents, this time in the US. So the original patent is in Japan, which is where they're going after Palworld 4, but these 2 are in the US. So there's a patent covering riding and flying systems very similar to the things that they used against Palworld, so they're getting it in the US now instead. And the more concerning one is effectively a patent on summoning and battling characters, just throwing out the Pokeball and summoning the guy. And the real issue here is that they should never have gotten those patents in the first place. Same time, they shouldn't have got them in Japan either. And most of this story is just saying how the patent office has just absolutely fucking dropped the ball here and has just not done its job in any way whatsoever. There's like very little resistance. Normally you would have people submitting things to say prior art, this existed way before Pokemon. And ordinarily that is how patents tend to get refused, is that competing or rival companies will submit prior art or whatever to say that no, this company doesn't get this patent because it already existed. Anyway, so this is from patent lawyer Kirk Simon, not sure how you pronounce his name. Broadly, I don't disagree with the many online complaints about these Nintendo patents. They have been an embarrassing failure of the US patent system. So both patents are for mechanics and concepts that ought to be obvious to anyone, and these ought to have made them ineligible to be patented. So the idea that you could climb on a flying creature and fly around on it, obvious. There shouldn't be a patent. Prior art shouldn't even be necessary. It's so obviously a thing that you should be able to do. Anyway, the fact that this was immediately allowed by the US Patent Office is very unusual. Most claims are rejected at least once. Despite its relevance to a conceit in countless games, this is the summoning thing. It was allowed without any pushback whatsoever from the US Patent Office, which is essentially unheard of. Like the above case, the reasons for allowance don't give us even a hint of why it was allowed. The examiner just paraphrases the claims without explaining why the claims are allowed over the prior art. This is extremely unusual and raises a large number of red flags. So essentially their issue here is that when a patent office allows a patent, they're meant to give an explanation as to why this counts as a patent. Like, why is this a unique expression of something, or why is this how does this demonstrate that it is uniquely different to the prior art, or that it somehow evolves the prior art more than what already exists? And the issue here was that they don't do that. They just effectively quote the submission instead, which is quoting the guy who wants the patent. It's like, that doesn't really work. So a patent in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. The real problem comes with what Nintendo are going to do with the patent, which is patent bullying, which is something Nintendo do a lot. So pragmatically speaking, though, it's not impossible to be sued for patent infringement, even when a claim infringement argument is weak, and bad patents like this cast a massive shadow on the industry. So this is basically saying that even though the patent is weak, and even though there's a strong possibility that the patent might be thrown out if it ever did go to court and so on, you could just point to the prior art and say the patent office absolutely dropped the ball and this should not have been a thing. The thing is, Nintendo have a lot of money, and not everybody has the money to fight that kind of legal battle. So for a company at Nintendo's scale, the claims of the patent don't need to actually make for a strong argument that would hold them in court. The threat of the lawsuit can stifle competition well enough on its own when it would cost millions of dollars to defend against. So like small indie companies and so on don't have the money to go against Nintendo. And that's the issue with the patent being given to them. Because they can use it as a cudgel to effectively say, pay us or we go to court and you won't be able to afford it. And even if we lose, you'll have spent so much money that you wouldn't be able to continue to be a rival, basically. So Nintendo win either way. Like, there wouldn't be an issue because of how patent law is enforced. They wouldn't have to pay for damages. That's the issue really there. Anyway. But on top of that, Nintendo showed off 2 games that effectively do the same thing. You know, they had, sorry, not 2 games. They showed off Monster Hunter Stories, which is effectively Pokemon, and definitely uses the same kind of mechanics that they're patenting and using against Pocket Pair. And then on top of that, the Ditto game, Pokopia, is just Minecraft. And that would absolutely be infringing on Minecraft patents. But again, Nintendo are totally fine doing that. So, you know, hypocrisy on both fronts. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of hypocrisy, I guess, former Bethesda exec Pete Hines claims subscription services are undercutting developers, even though he was instrumental in championing those subscription services. I definitely had highlights for this screen, so there they are. Okay. So Pete Hines, former head of publishing for Bethesda, then when Microsoft acquired them, he hung on for a little bit and then eventually left. Anyway, he's claiming that subscription services like Xbox Game Pass, which is former owner, or former employer, they didn't own him, are selling developers short. And again, this is largely just echoing something that I have said about, I'm not the only person saying this kind of thing. I'm not saying that Pete Hines watches this video or whatever, but the issue in that once the subscription service is big enough, it's going to stop retail sales, regular retail sales, as everybody just signs up for the subscription, and then that means they don't buy regular games. Then that means the platform holder who owns the subscription service can dictate what kind of games make their way over to the subscription, and then if your game doesn't match what they want, then it doesn't get put on the subscription service. And since people don't buy games anymore, they're just doing the subscription thing, your game effectively doesn't get out and you don't make any money. That's the kind of knock-on effect of what these subscription services could be, but it doesn't quite bear out that way. Anyway, so he was asked on a MinMax interview like what success looks like for developers on Xbox Game Pass, and this was essentially brought up with like Redfall, Arcane, Hi-Fi Rush, Tango Gameworks, and then Starfield. Bethesda used to work for Bethesda. So what does it look like to be successful on Game Pass? Because like obviously Hi-Fi Rush was heralded as a major triumph for Microsoft and Game Pass and first-party studios and what have you, and then they got shut down. So like that didn't obviously go well. And then Redfall arguably rushed out the door for Game Pass, and again led to significant layoffs at Arcane and then shuttering Arcane Austin. And obviously Bethesda's still going because it's a big enough name that I don't think Microsoft will get rid of them exactly, but Starfield didn't exactly do amazing critical wise. I think it sold well enough, but I don't think it did. It didn't do Skyrim numbers, let's say. I don't think anything could do Skyrim numbers since it's been re-released so many times. Anyway, so Pete Hines talking about effectively Microsoft here, but he's careful not to actually say Microsoft. But this is kind of a behind-the-scenes thing. I saw what I consider to be some short-sighted decision-making several years ago, and it seems to be bearing out the way I said. Subscriptions have become the new 4-letter word, right? You can't buy a product anymore. When you talk about a subscription that relies on content, if you don't figure out how to balance the needs of the service and the people running the service with the people who are providing the content, without which your subscription is worth jack shit, then you have a real problem. So it's the issue of balancing people who want games, the people who own the platform and want subscription revenue, and the people who make the content for the subscription to actually be worth anything. So it's those three kind of competing things, because obviously the consumer wants the subscription to be, one, worth the money, so they want the content to be good. The content provider wants to make sure that they're getting a good return for all the work they're doing, so they're getting paid well for the game itself. And then the platform holder wants subscription prices to be high, but not so high that it turns off customers, but they also need it to be high enough that they can pay the content providers and then also make obscene profits for themselves. And it's usually that one that wins out, unfortunately. But anyway, that's the balance he's talking about there. So if a company wants to make subscriptions a cornerstone of their business, which it does seem like Xbox wants Game Pass to effectively be the thing, I don't think Sony pushes PlayStation Plus as much as Microsoft pushes Game Pass, and Nintendo largely pays lip service to Nintendo Switch Online. Business must properly acknowledge, compensate, and recognize what it actually takes to create. There's a tension between the investment studios are making and the returns they're seeing off the back of those subscription deals. So the idea that, a developer decides to take the money for Game Pass versus how much they could have made if they weren't on Game Pass, it is a kind of decision that you need to make, in that you have the potential to make a lot more money not going onto Game Pass, but that also means that you'll have to compete with Game Pass subscriptions. You'll have to have your own marketing. You'll have to do a lot of that stuff. Whereas if you go on Game Pass, you won't make as much money because Microsoft effectively get all of it and they just pay you a lump sum for being on Game Pass. But it's guaranteed money. That's the trade-off you need to make there. So this tension is hurting a lot of people, including the content creators themselves, because they're fitting into an ecosystem that is not properly valuing and rewarding what they're making. The idea here is that they're not paid what they're worth, and that's like join the club. But yeah, that is the issue effectively with subscriptions, is that if subscriptions become the only game in town, they can dictate how much they pay you for your game, and increasingly it's less and less. There's a little bit here talking about what happened with Game Pass, in that initially when it was launched, 2017, that it would offer like day one, even from first party studios, and then more recently that's been changed so that there's now a separate tier. And if you want still the day ones, you got to pay for more for it. That's just enshittification in general. But that pivot did come after Microsoft spent $69 billion acquiring Call of Duty. So after it had dumped a lot of money, way too much money, then they decided we need to jack up the price on Game Pass. Xbox Phil Spencer said the merger demonstrated the company's ongoing commitment to video games. However, since completing the deal, Microsoft has shuttered multiple studios, cancelled a litany of projects, and made significant redundancies. And that's all with the promise of Game Pass subscription stuff. They're not really protected, is the problem. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of not being protected, now this segue is not good. Anyway, French Lara Croft actor starts lawsuit over alleged AI-generated voice lines in Aspire's Tomb Raider remasters. So this is specifically Tomb Raiders 4 to 6 remastered, and the issue here is that Françoise Cadol, French voice actor for Lara Croft, alleges that some of the lines in the remaster are using generative AI of her voice and not her actual voice. So the issues come up here in that, as part of the remaster, one of the latest patches for it is that they added back in lines that were not in the original game. And the problem with that is they only really have the text of the lines. They don't have the voice work because it was never in the script. This is all alleged. We don't know if it's actually true. But the assumption then is, in order to, get the actual audio, that they would have trained an LLM on Françoise's voice of Lara Croft for the French game. Again, this hasn't been pointed out if they did the same thing for English. But they've restored missing or incorrect voiceover lines in various languages, including Brazilian Portuguese, which we'll get to in a second. because we might have done the exact same thing there. Anyway, so Francoise has alleged that she's been alerted by a bunch of Tomb Raider fans that, hey, your voice in this sounds like a robot, effectively. So the apparently generative AI lines have a more robotic edge to them, in contrast to the natural inflections Godal speaks with in the original. Having listened to them, yeah, they do. It's quite obvious. Anyway, the French version isn't the only dub of the game to have allegedly have this problem. Lean Bastos, Croft's Brazilian, Portuguese actors effectively said pretty much the same thing. Fans informed her that some of the voice lines appear to have been subject to AI generation. She reached out to Aspire and they said this was an external development partner to blame, that these lines will eventually be removed in an upcoming patch. So whether that effectively ends the cease and desist that Francoise has sent, I mean, it's certainly a cease. You know, I don't think it's going anything beyond that. I guess it's a case of if Aspire choose not to remove those lines, then I guess it might become a bigger issue because they did not cease or desist. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. Aspire throwing an unnamed development partner under the bus, but of course they didn't name the development partner, so this could just be a case of them. Yeah, it's totally Frank who did that, not me. I would never do that. Get that shit out of the game. Get that shit out. Yeah, anyway. Moving on, Ubisoft workers raised concerns over alleged deal with Saudi Arabia. So this is somewhat of an old story. The end of last year, the French president, I think he's the French president. He's not the prime minister. No, president. Emmanuel Macron went to Saudi Arabia to meet with Prince Bonesaw. And as part of that trip, a bunch of French business leaders effectively went too. It's not clear if that was like I think the idea was that like to improve business relations between the two countries, I guess, but one of them is Yves Guillemot, CEO of Ubisoft, and it was alleged at the time that they had made some kind of deal with the Savvy Games Group, which is effectively the way that they put it, it's like the Royal Treasury Investment Team or something like that, which is effectively owned by Mohammed bin Salman. And it's effectively it's alleged that it was brought up by some people in Ubisoft, some management in Ubisoft, to say like, this is not a good look for us, guys. So staff internally questioned the company's alleged dealings with Saudi Arabia earlier this year. So the trip was like the end of last year, and then it came to light that there was some kind of contract deal set out in January of this year. So the head of the Social and Economic Committee questioned company management about whether seeking a contract with a person accused of crimes against humanity for ordering the assassination of a journalist could contribute to the Ubi bashing the company is currently suffering. So not like, hey, this isn't ethical for us to get in bed with him. It's just like, hey, this is going to make us look bad. Which I guess is how you need to phrase these things to sociopathic CEOs, but it is a little bit telling that that's the way they went with it. Not like, hey, we shouldn't, like, for moral and ethics reasons, we shouldn't be making deals with this. No, it's going to make us look bad. You know, for PR reasons, we shouldn't be doing this. But management pushed back on it to basically say that it's just money or whatever. And so management stated that it did not see the PIF's money, which is effectively the royal investment side of thing, the Public Investment Fund, which is Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. It's just different names for it. But they said that the Public Investment Fund money is not Mohammed bin Salman's money, even though he's in charge of it. I feel like this is semantics, but okay. CSE reportedly called management's attitude naive and noted they didn't respond to the question regarding their relationship impact or their PR thing. So they basically said, it's just money, bro, and also don't worry about it. That's pretty much it. To which the response was, well, you guys are idiots, but I've said my piece. Anyway, So talking about that, a lot of it was all alleged, but at the same time, after the trip to Saudi Arabia, there was a report in Les Echos. No, that sounds Spanish. Les Echos, I guess, French. That according to their sources, Ubisoft had entered into a partnership with the Saudi Games Group. So it does seem like they did take Saudi Arabia's public investment fund up on their offer. To have some DLC for Assassin's Creed Mirage that would be based around Saudi Arabia. This is even going against something that the Ubisoft developers of the game said last year, that Assassin's Creed Mirage was effectively supposed to be a self-contained thing. It wasn't meant to have DLC, wasn't meant to have seasons, wasn't meant to have any of that. It's meant to be like a throwback homage to like the original Assassin's Creed. Fully self-contained story with no additional bells and whistles, and that was supposed to keep development costs down and so on. Only to now turn around and say, yeah, actually no, DLC. Anyway, Ubisoft themselves have not confirmed the deal with the Saudi Games Group. However, Assassin's Creed Mirage is going to receive DLC later this year, and it is set in 9th century Al Ula, which is in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, and to top all of that off, it was announced by Jimo on stage in Riyadh, which is in Saudi Arabia. So it sure sounds like they're making a deal with Prince Bonesaw and trying to say, no, bro, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Keep giving us money. Anyway, moving on. All right, so stuff happening out in the community. So PlayStation's 30th anniversary continues. Its 30th anniversary, well, technically was last year, but that's only in Japan. Now it's having its 30th anniversary in the US and Europe. And as part of that 30th anniversary, there was a list put out by Circana Gaming Research to basically point out, here are the top 10 games across all PlayStation platforms in terms of sales. So these aren't like the best games. These are just the games that sold the most across PlayStation to PlayStation 5. And it is depressing. It is incredibly depressing. So number 1, GTA 5. It's not surprising, really. It's been top of the charts pretty much since it came out, and I don't think it's ever really dropped anything below 5 in terms of sales anyway. After that, Minecraft, again, it's fairly perennial since it ever came out. Red Dead Redemption 2, surprising, because it's all, pretty new compared to the rest of them. Compared to everything else on this list, it's quite new. So surprising it's so high. GTA San Andreas, again, it's another GTA, and it is effectively considered the best one. So not exactly surprising. But then after that, number 5, we have our first Call of Duty, and it will not be the last Call of Duty. So you gotta count them with me. Marvel Spider-Man. I guess, like Spider-Man, it's a Marvel property, and it's a Disney property. Yes, of course that made a lot of money. Hey, it's Call of Duty again. It's Call of Duty again. All right, then we have Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which again, it's Grand Theft Auto. Not exactly surprising. And then we have Call of Duty again. And then we have some more Call of Duty. And then we have Spider-Man again. Okay, I mean, technically it's a different Spider-Man, but also it's the same Spider-Man. Anyway, then The Last of Us, because Sony released it so many times, it's probably not surprising. It's notable that it's not part 2. It's part 1 that sold more. Then the God of War remake, and then Skyrim, because Bethesda released it so many times, and then Call of Duty again. There it is. Rainbow Six Siege. This is somewhat surprising, again, to see it that high. And then Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty. So did you get how many Call of Duties there were? Because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of the top, it was top 20. 9 out of the top 20 highest selling games from the PS1, which is going back to 1996, to now, are Call of Duty games. Now, again, you could say like 3 of them are Grand Theft Auto games as well, sure, but Grand Theft Auto games don't come out very often, whereas Call of Duty games come out every year and are effectively the same game every year. Don't at me. They're the same fucking game every year. And people buy them. And I guess it's just a reminder that no matter how different and how diverse the video game libraries can be on the different platforms, the same handful of games make most of the money. You know, it's the same kind of guy. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5, Red Dead 2, and then like San Andreas, Vice City, that's all the same company. That's all the same publisher. Obviously, all of the Call of Duties are the same publisher, Activision, and now Microsoft. And then after that, I guess Sony, Last of Us, God of War, the two Spider-Mans, Bethesda with Skyrim, and then Ubisoft, Rainbow Six Siege. So like they're almost like odd exceptions being thrown in there. I do find it notable that Horizon's not in it, and Sony just keep pushing that as like the best thing on the console, and yet it's doesn't appear anywhere anyway. But yeah, it's kind of disappointing that, again, this is just top selling. It's not like top rated or anything like that. But we're missing out on stuff like, you know, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, Tekken, Dark Souls, Nier, Witcher, Persona, Cyberpunk, so many other better games out there, and yet it's just a sea of Call of Duty, smothering any greater sense of the breadth, variety, and whimsy of the games. This is from Digital Foundry's John Lineman. Man, this list makes me sad. Most people playing games really only play the same few titles. So this is the US specifically. So it is sales in US history. So this isn't European. If it was European, it would, to be honest, it would look pretty much the exact same. It's just FIFA would be in there more. That's all. You know, FIFA might replace one or two of the Call of Duties, but otherwise it'd be effectively the same, which is, again, pretty disappointing. I'd be curious to see the Japanese ones, because I have the feeling that Call of Duty doesn't have as big a penetration in Japan. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling it's like not as well played. Anyway. But yeah, that was pretty. I feel you, Kratos. That was pretty depressing. Speaking of depressing, though, Deus Ex writer says the fact Elon Musk actually loves it is its worst legacy. So this is coming from one of the writers of the original Deus Ex. So not the Adam Jensen. I never asked for this. The newer ones. This is the older ones. Come back to the 90s. So Elon Musk seems to love the classic sci-fi immersive sim Deus Ex, despite it being a game precisely about how people like him are ruining the world. One of the game's writers recently explains how that's the worst part of the game's legacy. So Musk has, unfortunately, repeatedly called Deus Ex one of his favorite games. He was talking about it over the pandemic, saying that, like, oh, this is just like one of the events in the game and so on. Never mind that he's absolutely the villain of he's just fucking Bob Page. He's not really Bob Page. Trump is Bob Page. What the fuck's the VersaLife guy's name? Fuck, he's one of them. He might as well be Bob Page, actually, as well. Anyway, it's bizarre. So this is from Grossman, one of the writers. It's bizarre that Elon Musk would not recognize where he actually sits in the Deus Ex universe, because it is not in the JC Denton role, which is the protagonist. As is obvious to everyone, Musk is the one with power, and he's just pathologically incapable of honest introspection, which is, of course, narcissism. He can't be the bad guy, because he's a narcissist. Anyway, I would say Musk is like a Deus Ex villain, except that the franchise doesn't have any villains as whiny and self-servingly delusional as he's shown himself to be. Well, you might as well burn him, I suppose. Anyway, I guess we'll leave Borderlands because it's probably the big game this week. Anyway, that was our news for the 8th to the 14th of September, 2025. So we had the Nintendo Direct, showed off a couple of new Nintendo games, but otherwise, kinda disappointing, I guess. I mean, the Yoshi game looks like it might be interesting. The Pokemon Pokopia Ditto thing, again, similarly might be interesting, but I don't think there was anything, mind-blowing. I mean, Metroid 4... or Metroid Prime 4 being out pretty soon. Yeah, that's pretty cool, but I've yet to play the other Metroid Primes, so I still have all three of those games to get through. So it's unlikely I'll be buying it when it comes out. I'm almost certainly going to be waiting until I have at least paid the other three games. Hades 2 getting a confirmed release date is also pretty good, but again, I have so much on my plate right now that I won't be playing it straight away. But I really want to. Like, I really want to, but I think it would be irresponsible of me to do that, because it would be jumping it way to the top of the I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I think I'll end up talking myself into playing Hades 2. Anyway, Acclaim coming back from the dead is hilarious, really. Like, everything that's old is new again. The games that they were showing off are very much like old Acclaim games in some ways. Like real like throwbacks to like old game design. And we'll see how it works out. We'll see how it works out for them, Cotton. Yeah, I'm like some of them sound interesting. I guess it will be a case of just how much they charge for them. Because I don't see, while they do look interesting, I don't see them being like $60 things. That seems like a lot of money for what seems like it should be like more of a 30, maybe at most 20, maybe. I mean, Silksong is only 20. That's kind of the issue now, is that Silksong put itself out for so cheap that like, so why can't all games be that cheap? Anyway, what else do we have? The Pacific Drive DLC didn't show off enough, but like I said, I really liked that game. So, I did want more of a horror element to the original. And if that's what they go with, that would be good. But we need to see more on that. New releases, Borderlands, I'm not super into, as I've talked about. Catan not. While I am interested in playing it, I just don't think I'll get around to it. So again, there's too many fucking games I have to play. And I still haven't fucking played Clair Obscur, and I've been meaning to do that for ages now. Anyway, industry bullshit. Again, there wasn't a whole lot this week, really. Like, the Nintendo patent thing is, if anything, kind of old news. Because those patents were given to them weeks ago at this stage. And it's really only come to light recently that the patent office did basically nothing. Didn't do any kind of due diligence on, hey, maybe they shouldn't be given this patent. And I would normally be of the position, I don't want to say normally, I am of the position that software shouldn't be patented anyway, because so much of software relies on stuff that came before it. We just keep building on top. Like, there's no software that is made entirely from scratch with no prior use of any other person's software. Like, so much of it is reliant on stuff that came before it, that trying to patent it is just bullshit. And you have to bullshit the patent office to actually get those kind of patents, because you have to just make it so that, oh, this is too complicated, you wouldn't understand, so just give me the patent anyway. Yeah. And on top of that, patents are given for too long. Their lifetime is way too long. It needs to be cut in half at a minimum. French actor in Tomb Raider. We'll see. This might just be a case of we'll take it out, and that's the end of it. But it is interesting that Tomb Raider fans pointed it out. You would think, hey, new content for a game I really like, but it's generative AI shit. And they have, for what I think is a acceptable response, which is get this shit out of the game. Although that's not necessarily what the response was, right? The response was to tell the actor, hey, your voice, it sounds like they AI'd your voice. You might want to do something about that. I think it's an interesting position that the fans are on the side of the original actor rather than on the side of the developer of the video game. I mean, I guess technically Aspyr aren't the developer. They're doing the remaster, but Core Design are essentially the original developer, even though they don't exist anymore. Anyway, yeah, that list of 20 games, bestsellers, super, super disappointing. I guess I suppose it's the same way of looking at like the top 20 blockbusters, I guess, in cinema would similarly not be an indication of the breadth of film, the kind of films that are out there. How many of them are superhero movies or like animated Disney things or that kind of thing? Like, they're not, like, none of them are going to be niche French avant-garde thing, you know? But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's disappointing to see how much of it is just Call of Duty. Call of Duty 2001, Call of Duty 2002, Call of Duty 2003. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.